and CEO of Harlem's Fashion Row. Daniel is an alumna from FIT's International Trade and Marketing Industries program. She founded the Harlem's Fashion Row, as it's called, or HFR, in 2007 because of the following jaw-dropping statistic. Less than 1% of designers sold at major retail outlets are designers of color. HFR is a regular presence at New York Fashion Week. Most recently, they organized an event featuring Dapper Dan, April Walker, and Myra Hilton, and their work has been covered on fashionista.com and Essence, the New York Times, CBS, and many, many other outlets. In the fall, HFR's collaboration with Nike and LeBron James to create a sneaker, the LeBron 16, sold out in minutes. Okay, Brandice, thank you for coming on the show. Welcome. Oh dear, Rashika, I can't hear Brandice. I'm not sure why. Let's see, can you all hear her?
I said, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, thanks. So what can you just start by telling me, like, what have the last few weeks been like for you?
Oh my goodness. So, about 5 weeks ago, I have a 4-year-old. And so it was announced that her school was closing for a while. This is when, everything started to just bubble over. And so as soon as I found out her school was closing, I actually called home, which for me is Memphis, Tennessee, and said, I got to come home because I could not work in the house with a 4-year-old. So it has been quite interesting trying to juggle the roles of motherhood and work, and also trying to support the designers that we work with. It's been challenging, but I've managed to keep a smile on my face.
Oh wow. So wait, you're from Memphis, right? So are you with relatives or?
Yeah, I have all my families here. So I have two sisters that are here. My parents are here. I have adult nieces and nephews that are here. So I knew I would have a lot more support here than in New York. So we decided to, make just get on a plane. Which, by the way, on our plane there were a total of 6 people.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
19. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So so you've been in Memphis, but you've still been doing work for HFR, right? Tell me about that.
So we are working on a new virtual event that we have coming up. When something like this happens, for me, I'm always asking myself, okay, how do I serve right now? Like, this is actually something that's never happened in our lifetime. And so that is like my number one question. How do I serve designers that, that I work with? What do they need right now? How do I also bring the fashion community together, especially the multicultural fashion community, which is a lot of the people who come to our events? And really, how can I help to encourage others? That is like what I'm always trying to figure out. And so every day is about that for me, Alex. I'm on phone calls with designers every single day, helping them work through pivots for their businesses. We're working on a virtual event right now that will be a fundraiser for designers. I was on a call earlier on our Instagram Live with the CFDA, who's just launched this amazing fund with Vogue called Common Thread. And then we have a designer retreat that we had scheduled for July in partnership with Nike. And so we're moving that to virtual. So lots going on in the middle of all of this.
So what's a designer retreat? Tell me about that.
So a designer retreat for us is an opportunity for designers to come together and like learn, be inspired, and really kind of build community, because most designers that I know work in their own little world, in their own little bubbles, right?
Sure.
And they never kind of, get the opportunity to like find out what other designers are going through and what challenges they're having. And this really was kind of brought about when we partnered 3 designers to work on the LeBron James 16 shoe. What I found was that those 3 designers end up becoming like such great support systems for each other. They were a shoulder to lean on. They shared resources, shared factory resources and material resources, and really became like a family. And so that kind of inspired how I approached the designer retreat, in that I wanted to create a really cool 3-day experience for designers where they would not only get a chance to hear from industry leaders and go to places like the CFDA's office and Elle Magazine and Intermix to meet with the president, but then they would also get a chance to kind of build a network with each other.
Cool. So in your experience, the designers are maybe not so good at like the networking business aspect of it, or no?
No, they really struggle with that. And, you know, I think probably one of the most challenging things you can try to do in the world is be a designer and run your business. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of the designers that I'm working with are doing both. And when you're trying to be the creative and the entrepreneur, like you really just don't have time, because you're so, it's all, there is always something to do because you're creating, but then you also have to sell the item that you've created. So this kind of gives them an opportunity to just like let loose, let their hair down, actually be themselves, come in, share their challenges, and not be judged.
Mm, that sounds cool. Can you tell me a little bit about the LeBron James project? I know that's in the past, but it's kind of amazing. Like, what happened? How did that happen?
Well, it's kind of in the past, but I'm still working with this team, and I'm still working with Nike. We actually have 3 designers right now at Nike's headquarters in the middle of this for a Serena Williams project. So we are still working with them on projects. That project came about after our 10th year. So our 10th year for Harlem's Fashion Row was, oh my gosh, it was like the hardest year we've ever had. I believe, I think that everything that could go wrong went wrong, from sponsors pulling out for the very first time that had never happened before. We decided to have an event outside and it rained cats and dogs that night. As a matter of fact, it was sunny the entire week, except that one day our event was on. We had to rent tents, which was not in our budget. I came out of that event in debt. It was so hard. And I tell that first because I want, I have to always tell that story before I tell the story of Nike and Lebron, because that's the place we were in. And so what I had said was, I'm not going to plan any events for 2018. However, if a brand wants to partner with us and bring a product to life, like to the market, I would love to do that. And so that year, we had the event in September 2017. In October 2017, I got a phone call from a brand who said, hey, what are you doing in February? We want to sponsor it. That has never happened to me, Alex, before or since, right? So that was my sign. Okay, clearly I'm supposed to move forward with events. And then in November, I got an email from a woman who I had met with maybe 3 years prior at the Library Hotel on Madison Avenue. And she loved Harlem's Fashion Row and what we were doing. And she said, I have nothing for you right now. She worked for a marketing agency. She said, but if I do, I'll let you know. And her email was simply, hey, when we met, I told you that if I had something, I would let you know. I think I have something interesting. Can you hop on a call? And so we hopped on a call with her, and she was so vague about the whole thing. There's this athletic company, there's this athlete, he said this thing, now they want to do something. I think HFR is the perfect partner for this. If you're interested, I'll have an NDA sent through. And I told you the place I was in. I was like at the worst, my so I said, what do I have to lose? Yes, have them send it through. And the NDA came through and it had a swoosh on it. And probably everything in me dropped. I'm like, what is this all about? It went really fast from there. From there, we were on a call the very next day with the brand manager at Nike for LeBron James, which was an African-American woman, which she was the first African-American woman in that position. And she had heard LeBron James talk about Black women in particular, and she wanted to do something with that statement to influence his next shoe. So she
Mm.
had reached out to Marissa, who had reached out to me. And even if, as we were on that call talking, like all the hairs on my arms were standing up, like I had butterflies, like I just knew. And normally I try to play it cool, but I couldn't even play it cool, Alex. I just said to her, I said, I don't know what is going to come from this call, but I think something really amazing is going to come from this because I have butterflies and I think all the hairs on my arm are standing up.
So you helped realize the shoe, right? So how did that come about? How was the design chosen? And
Yeah, so what they wanted me to do was, she said, Brandice, if you could get us a few designers to choose from so that we can pick one of those designers to partner with a team to design the next shoe. And I went through so many designers, but then I decided, you know what? I should go with the 3 designers who were just in our 10th anniversary show, because I went through so much for that event, but so did they. They all had different challenges. And I said, it should be them. And they were all designers who had shown with us before. So I had worked with them for a while, knew that they were full of integrity and that I would enjoy working with them. So I presented those 3. And I put them in a deck. I told them, here's why I selected them. Here's how they exude strength, because I knew that the word strong and strength was going to be used for the shoe, the inspiration for the shoe. And they were supposed to pick one and came back and said, we couldn't pick one. We picked all 3. And so that was how that happened. And then maybe 2 weeks later, it was in December, me and the 3 designers were on our way to Portland to meet with the entire Nike team. Lebron has a team of maybe about 20 people at Nike, who is totally just dedicated to the LeBron James brand there. And before we walked in the door, I said to the designers, look, guys, we're not going to try to have any pretense. We're not going to try to be anybody we aren't. We are walking through the door as authentically who we are, what we've been through, our past. We're not covering up anything. And they either take us as the real versions of ourselves, or they don't take us at all. And so for me, you know, a lot of times when I'm talking about the work that I do at Harlem's Fashion Row, tears come in my eyes. Sometimes I start crying, and I had that full moment because I had committed to not holding back anything. And so I went in there and I shared Harlem's Fashion Row, and I showed them a video, and I cried, and which, I mean, it's not the most professional thing to do in a meeting, but I had committed to not holding back anything. And the designers really told their authentic stories, and it was just beautiful, honestly. And then I said to the team around the table, you guys know so much about us. We don't know anything about you.
mm,
And they started sharing their stories. And what was interesting was that the people in the room who had been working with the person next to them for years had no idea that what they were sharing was a part of their story.
oh,
And so I always tell people that what they saw in that shoe and what they felt in that shoe goes so much deeper than the shoe. There was such a beautiful collaborative spirit and heart behind it. And I think that's why it sold out so well and why it did so well.
mm, that's awesome. But I think also what one thing you're saying in your story, if I understand, is that part of why you're able to do things like this is because you've been so persistent and consistent with HFR that people now know you and they come to you with things to some extent. Is that not true? I mean, I feel like in some ways your story is a good story of persistence. Do you think that's accurate?
Alex, oh my gosh, so much, so much persistence. I mean, it's not easy when you're trying to build a brand and you don't have any money, connections, or influence. And so I literally started HFR as a transplant from Memphis with neither of those 3 things. And, you know, when you're trying to build something like that from scratch, you're going to come across more challenges and obstacles than, quite honestly, you could ever imagine. Everything you can think of, I've probably come across it. But uh,
Go ahead. Go ahead. Were you done?
you know, but it's just been pushing through.
Mm,
pushing through, not being afraid to ask for help, really getting vulnerable and telling people when I'm in a tight spot.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of prayer and faith. Like it's just been all of it. It really has, because this has been probably one of the most incredible journeys of my life, but definitely one of the hardest. And I'm a mother, so for me to say that this has been one of the hardest,
I hear you. I hear you.
really did not.
So actually, can we back up a little? Like, tell me. Now, you grew up in Memphis, right? So Southern person. What made you decide that you like? When did you know? Like, and this was and FIT was not your first college, right? You got a bachelor's degree. So what made you decide that you wanted to go into fashion per se? You think?
I knew after my freshman year, I went to University of Tennessee. I knew after the first year that I wanted to do fashion. I actually changed my major. They had a fashion merchandising degree there, believe it or not.
Mm.
It was nothing like FIT, so I actually got my first degree in fashion merchandising from University of Tennessee, and so I knew that that was what I wanted to do. And for a while, I moved to Atlanta and I worked there. You know, I call those my wonder years. I worked as an insurance salesman, and then I worked for a home builder in accounts payable. And when that company closed, the company wasn't doing well. And I knew at that point that I had kind of a choice to make. I was 23 or 20, I was 24 years old. 24 years old. And I said, I have a choice to make. I can either kind of go on this trajectory of working for a home builder, I was getting paid decent money, or I can really pivot into what has always tugged at my heart, which was something in fashion. And I made the decision to make that pivot, which for me meant moving back home to Memphis, living in my parents' home, which was terrible.
No, that's not a starter. I think it's not an answer.
Yeah, that was not good, but it was what I had to do at the time, and I worked at Brooks Brothers part-time, folding up shirts, and I filed papers for AT&T until while I was there, there's a guy who I was on my knees filing papers, and he came to me and said, "What are you supposed to be doing?" And somehow I instinctively knew that he meant what was I supposed to be doing with my life, and I said, "I'm supposed to be a buyer," because at the time that was my dream. And he said, "Well, what are you doing here?" And I said, "I've been sending my resume out. No one's calling me back." And he looked at my resume and he said, "Oh, I see why no one's calling you back." And he helped me get my resume in shape. And we, I ended up getting a job here in Memphis at Catherine's, which is owned by Charming Shops, in their buying office.
Mm.
So, so fashion was always a thing. I just didn't take the straight route. But I knew I wanted to move to New York when I was in college. I just was very afraid to move there because I didn't know anyone who had even visited New York.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Wow. I was scared of New York too. I can totally relate.
From
I'm from Washington, D.C., actually.
okay,
I
yeah.
sort of worked my way up the coast slowly, but I didn't really land until I was 30 because I just was too afraid. But tell me more about how did you end up at FAT and what was your experience like there?
So I ended up at FIT when I got knew okay, I'm ready to move to New York. I started applying to FIT, and I was actually applying to get a degree in fashion merchandising again, a second degree, and I couldn't get in. Like apparently that degree is super competitive.
Mm.
But my buyer at the time knew someone who worked at FIT, and he said to her, "Hey, we have a new major, international trade and marketing. If she tries to go that route, she can probably get in." And so I decided to change it to international trade and marketing, which was one of the best decisions I ever. Well, I didn't make the decision, it kind of happened, but it was one of the best things to ever happen to me. That major was so incredible. I moved to New York and was working for an intimate apparel company in production and going to FIT at night. So I was going, and I was 28 years old when I started FIT. But what I loved so much about it was this was my choice. I decided to go to school this time because I wanted a degree from FIT. And every professor that taught a class actually had experience in it. So, whether it was entrepreneurship, I remember I took an entrepreneurship class there, which was so amazing, taught by Josh Green, one of my favorite professors at FIT. and he owned Panjiva, and Panjiva is a competitor to Alibaba.
Hmm.
So, and he brought in the founders of Rent the Runway. He brought in like so many cool founders. He brought in to speak with us. It was a very unique college experience.
Hmm.
One that I absolutely loved.
Yeah. So it was like that. So what really interested you at FHC was the real world experience. Did you
Absolutely.
can you think of specific lessons that you learned that you've been able to apply in your work or
Yeah. So that entrepreneurship class was probably, I mean, because I had my company while I was taking that entrepreneurship class. So that was clearly the most valuable. I was actually doing HFR, working full time and going to FIT at night. And so Josh ended up being a mentor to me. I ended up meeting with the investment. I didn't get an investment, but I met with the person who does the investments at IAG. Um, he's connected me with so many people. It's like, I learned how to do an investment pitch deck from him, because we had to do them in class. And it was also my fashion law class. That was my second favorite class. I still have that book. I haven't held on to many of my books from FIT, but that was one of the ones that I really held on to. My professor of that class was actually an attorney for Blue Marine.
oh
So it was just this cool real life experience. I think the thing that was the best was that the professors were not only doing the work during the day, and so they gave you like this real life experience, but also they made themselves super accessible.
wow. They were helpful and practical at the same time. Maybe let's talk a little bit about how you founded HFR. Like, how did you come up with this idea? And was it the statistic itself that made you want to? I mean, that's a really disturbing statistic, Brandice.
It is. And I always say to people, I wish I could say that I was so strategic about it, but that's not how it happened. I think sometimes if you really know like what your small idea can become, you probably will never do it because it will intimidate you. For sure, if we
Mhm.
had, seen what HFR could become, it would have, and we haven't reached our peak yet, but it would have for sure intimidated me. So I think sometimes, God gives us just an idea and then you have to act on that idea. And then that, like, it kind of threads together. And so for me, it was just the idea. Do a fashion show. Went to a fashion show in Brooklyn. It was a small show at a restaurant. Was nothing fancy about it. Quite, but even though I felt very fancy because it was the first fashion show I had been invited to. And while there, I had the idea, I want to do this in Harlem. And that was the idea, period. I want to do this in Harlem. But it wasn't just a regular idea. It was one that took me from watching the fashion show, like we had kind of wiggled our way up to the front. So it took me from being in the front. I left my friend. I went to the back. I found a sofa while the fashion show was going on. And my mind was just racing with ideas on this fashion show in Harlem. And that was really the birth of it because at that point, she and I talked about it all the way up to the Upper West Side. We went to some party. I didn't even engage with anyone at the party because I'm still thinking about this idea. We go home, I'm still talking about it. And by the time I got home, we knew who I was going to ask to be in it. I had kind of decided on a date, like all these things in that subway ride. And that was May of 2007 when that idea came. And because I didn't know any better, I planned the event for August 2007, which was 3 months later.
Oh my God.
So, and quite honestly, everyone except one designer told me no. They told me, we don't know you. Who are you? What is Harlem's Fashion Robes? A name I made up. Why would we do this? I've invested so much in my brand. I can't even call anyone to vouch for you. So it was very difficult to get designers to be a part of it for probably the first 4 years of HFR. But the first year was brutal. It was brutal. I had to go into those boutiques because what I did was I asked 5 boutiques. All the boutique owners were also designers, and they were all these boutiques that were popping up in Harlem at the time. And they were just brutal. They were not nice. And they would say no. And here I am hopping in with a smile from Memphis. And they're just like, what? You're from where?
Wow.
It took a while for me to get eventually 4 out of the 5 of them say yes.
Wow.
Sorry,
So so your first show was for designers.
4 designers.
Are you still working with any of the people that you started working with those years ago? Any of those designers?
No, I'm in touch with them though. Like one of them now, she's like, she doesn't design anymore. She owns a vegan restaurant in Brooklyn. The other, he went into politics. The other, she doesn't design anymore. And I'm not sure what happened to the fourth one. So, you know, that's one of the reasons, Alex, I'm so passionate about HFR is because I have seen so many talented designers of color come in the industry, get great press, get great opportunities, but can't sustain themselves, so they leave.
Yeah.
And I can't really blame them because a lot of times they're really choosing between do I pay my rent and like actually be able to live, or do I do the thing that I know I was probably put on this earth to do? And that's hard. That's really difficult when you have given 2 or 3 years to design and you can't even come up with the money to buy a Metro card. That's
Yeah.
tough. And that's a lot of their stories. And these are designers who are featured in Vogue and have Beyonce wearing them. And, you know, but that's their real life stories. And so anyway, that's the thing that keeps pushing me and keeps fueling me with HFR. But the very first show was, not perfect, but so successful. We had a write up in Women's Wear Daily at the time. Style.com wrote an article. I think the biggest thing was I knew that I had found what I was supposed to do. And actually, the next 2 years after that is when I really spent kind of researching designers of color and went down this rabbit hole of buying all these books, every book I could find and get my hand on, and started going through the websites of all these major department stores. And that is when I was like, this cannot be real. Like I'm missing something. I'm an outsider. I have no clue what I'm talking about, and it was true. Like it was actually true. The statistic that I was seeing was true. And that for me was like, okay, now I understand why this idea had to be done.
It was more than just a business. It's like a mission for you. I mean, it's outrageous that this is the case. Have you, since you've been in business and since you've been doing it, have you noticed any gains or changes in the industry?
Yes, and that's why this time honestly kind of scares me a bit because I think we were just finally at the place where, I mean, there were like, I could rattle off 20 designers of color to you, that were sold in different stores, that were on retailer, that were on Net-a-Porter or on Moda Operandi, and then this happened and it's like, oh, so one of my things now is like, what can I do to make sure that this crisis does not take us back to where we were, in 2007. So it's a big concern of mine.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are some of the things that you have done with designers over the years that you found really helped them?
So one of the things that I try to do and be is a bridge, right? And so if HFR can be a bridge, I think we have served our purpose. And so for that, what do I mean by that? That can be, for example, we have a designer now, which I'm not sure the partnership is, but we had a designer that was coming out with a partnership with Banana Republic. We had a designer that was working on something with the Gap. We had, and the Gap they've been absolutely incredible. I love the team over there. We've done desk sauce at the CFDA where I've asked Stephen, hey, can you invite all of your contacts to the table and then let me bring 3 designers and have them kind of match between like the relationships you have and the relationships I have. And that has resulted in, we've had 2 designers picked up by 4510 Boutique, which is, for those who may not know, it's one of the, I think they've got like a whole floor at Hudson Yards, if I'm not mistaken. Like they are doing incredibly well. It's a really well-known boutique. So we've had that happen. We've done partnerships with Cabana Trade Show, which is one of the largest trade show in the US, and had designers set up there and working with Cabana. So for me, I'm just like, how do I kind of take the platform that HFR has and connect designers with opportunities. Again, having HFR kind of be the bridge in between. I mentioned that we have designers at Nike right now, and Nike was working. Serena Williams has something called the Serena Williams Design Crew, and so we were able to help them curate the designers for that project. And so 3 of the designers that we brought to the table were selected for that, and they're getting, a nice salary. They're getting corporate housing at Nike. They're getting the experience on working on this incredible collection with Serena Williams and her crew there at Nike. They're also getting the opportunity to work with Nike designers. So we have lots of different things going on and lots of new ideas that we want to launch as well. But if I just want to continue to be a bridge.
Absolutely, that makes so much sense. Are there, now you mentioned the Serena Williams, the LeBron James, these great projects. Are there other, like for you in looking back over, I guess it's like 13 years, it'll be this year since you started, like real moments that are just highlights for you, or just 1 or 2 like moments where you just thought, okay, I know this is the right thing, I'm doing the right thing, and this is really working, and it's great.
Yes. I think when we got our first big sponsor, Target was the first brand who supported us. And they were opening up stores in New York. It was when they first started opening up the stores in New York. And they really believed in us and bet on us big time. And that was, we did the first year they supported us. We did a smaller event at Studio Museum in Harlem. And then the second year we did a large show at Jazz at Lincoln Center. And, where I think it was Samantha Ronson was the DJ. We honored Tyson Beckford that night. Donna Williams, who was at the Metropolitan Museum of Art at the time. And June Ambrose, we honored those 3. And that was, I remember seeing Beth Ann Hardison, who is like, you guys know, is like the godmother of fashion.
Yes.
Tyson Beckford, and there was like June Ambrose, and there was someone else sitting beside him. And I just remember seeing that moment and thinking, wow, okay, we have something. Because you're working and you're working, but to have large brands like Target, Marriott was actually our second big brand. Coca-Cola was our third big brand partner. So to have these kind of brands come on board, it just kind of let me know, okay, I'm doing something right.
Yeah. What's it like to work with, now you've also worked with Amazon and I think McDonald's and like really big names. Is that unnerving? Is it scary to work with these big corporations? I mean, what's that like? Do they get fashion at all?
In the beginning, it was tough in the beginning, right? Because you're really trying to you're gaining your confidence in that space. But after doing it for a while, one of the things I realized is that, brands aren't brands. Brands are people. It's just, and we all have so much more in common than we realize. And so I just know that. I know if you're a human and I'm a human, I can connect with you. Bottom line, I don't care what our backgrounds are, what our beliefs are, where we're from. Like if you're a human and I'm a human, we have so much in common off the top. And so now my thing is, I don't even sell sponsorships anymore. I really just connect with people. And if they see value in what we do and I think we can provide value, we connect there. But I don't like the idea of selling anymore. I just connect.
Yeah. All right. I think I can see how you're very Southern in some ways. The friendliness, it comes through. We have a ton of questions, and if you don't mind, I'm going to start asking some of them. Is that all right? Well, we have lots of them. Good grief. Simone McDowell. Creating a designer retreat is such a great idea. Brandice, how do you prepare yourself and open your mind for creative ideas to come to you? Is this something you actively work on?
Oh my goodness. So Simone, one of the hardest thing is acting on a creative idea, right? So I think we all have them, but it's like, how do you take it from an idea to a physical thing, like something that's actually happening? And, because what ends up happening for me, and I think a lot of people on the line can probably agree with this, is that I start out super excited. I'm like ready, like let's go. I'm all this. This is gonna be the best event that's ever happened. That's how I start. Okay. And then about a week into it, I'm like, Brandice, what are you doing? Who's gonna sign up for this? Who's gonna say yes? You know, are you nuts? Like, how are you gonna pay for this? And so it's really not about like starting. It's like, how do you keep the momentum going so that you can get to the finish line? And one of the things that I do is I kind of force myself to the finish line with everything that I do. And the way that I do that is I decide on a date of when it's happening. I come up with a name for the event. I decide on a time that it's going to take place, and then I put it out there. And it forces me to fill in the blanks. And that is scary as I don't know what. You know, if you follow me on Instagram, I talk about cliff jumping all the time, but that is my cliff jump. That is the only way I can get something done. Otherwise, you know, I'll sit on it for, I don't know, years, months, a decade, maybe. So if I'm gonna, I know for sure that if I have a creative idea that I know I want to get done, I have to basically force myself to do it by putting it out there and saying that this is what I'm doing.
That's a great advice. Here, let me read this other. This is interesting. A person named Cynthia Bradley asks, how do you think the pandemic is affecting the creative process, even the types of clothing that we will wear post-crisis, i.e., protective clothing with a flare when flying, etc.? Good question. Wow.
You know, I think that Minthia, I think that some of the hardest moments, right, in history normally forces creativity. And it's not that you need tough times to be creative, but if you probably look at the course, and I've been researching this too, if you look at the course of history when like big inventions have been made, there's usually been during some time of crisis. And so I think that right now, you're going to see a few things happen in the fashion community. Some people are going to thrive. I'm talking to designers right now who are, you know, already on course to make a few $1,000,000 by the end of this year with the sales of masks, right? So I am already, so those designers who were doing okay is now about to soar to brand new heights, even within, right, as a result of this pandemic. And then there are other people who are getting like incredible creative ideas right now for their brands, and a lot of them revolve around masks and protective gear that they think people are going to need. And then there are other designers who are literally frozen in place and, you know, really just aren't moving. And I'm really concerned about those designers the most, quite honestly. Those are the ones I'm on the phone with, like, hey, I don't see you pivoting on your timeline. What's happening? So I think we'll see a lot of creativity come from designers that we had not even imagined. Actually, there's a designer, her name is Caress Dorsley, and her brand is, I can't believe I can think of it now, 1620, I believe.
You can post her Instagram tomorrow and they can all find out.
Yes, I'll post it. But she has these really cool masks right now that you can literally unzip to like put a straw in. And so it's so cool. It's so innovative, so interesting. And, you know, and every time she posts it, she sells out of it in hours. So that just proves that there's so much opportunity. In terms of what we're going to be wearing now, I definitely think you'll see a big difference. You know, everyone at the airport will be wearing masks. I think you'll see the luxury industry jump in this. I think you'll be seeing Gucci masks, Fendi masks. I think you'll be seeing Louis Vuitton masks. I'm pretty sure that people are going to probably start to sell, and I may be giving someone an idea, I don't know. But I'm sure now when you buy a handbag, the handbag is now going to come with the pocket for your mask with your mask in it. Those are the types of things that I think that we'll see.
These are great ideas. I think I'm going to steal one. Someone, Lewis asked, I applied to HFR ITB designer program, but do not have a website and currently working on building an online portfolio of my designs. I'm not the best seamstress and I'm unable to manufacture at this time. Do you have any advice for me?
Oh, that's such a great question. We have an In the Black program, which is a virtual program for designers that we take them through. And that's such a great question. We are developing something right now because there are so the ITB program is for kind of established designers, but I also recognize that there are people in a phase before they get to established, and we are creating something for designers who are in that place where you may not have a website up yet. You're maybe just at the beginning. You might even be thinking about designing, but not designing yet. So if you would just stick with us, we'll be announcing that very, very soon. But in the meantime, I have office hours on Fridays, and you are welcome to email me to set up 15 minutes for a call. My email is brandice@harlemsfashionrow.com.
This is value added. This is really a valuable session. Here's one from Simone McDowell. How did you get to the place of not holding back and showcasing your authentic self no matter what, i.e. being in the room with LeBron's team, honoring Spike Lee, etc.?
I didn't start out this way. I can tell you that. When I started HFR, I thought that I needed to be fashion. So I did not start out this way at all. I spent probably the first 5 years of HFR trying to be what I thought people would want me to be for this role. I think that the more challenges you go through, and for me, the more challenges that I went through, the more things that I had to kind of overcome. It just took me to a place of, you know what? Why? Like, why try to be anybody other than myself? I think my 10th year in business is probably when I became the most vulnerable I've ever become. And it was because I had gone through it. That event was traumatic for me. It really, really was. That year was traumatic for me. So I think when you get to like your lowest place, you kind of come out of that with no pretense because you understand what it's like to feel probably my worst, quite honestly. And so after that, you're just like, take me as I am. Here's what I have to offer. Take it or leave it. It's up to you. But that for me was really helpful. But I wish also that someone had told me at the beginning of my journey that the person that people were going to connect to most was the real me. I didn't know that. And, even when I was working with brands and sponsors, I always thought that I needed to present a certain way. And, and you do want to be professional, but at the same time, brands are never going to buy your company or your event or your idea. They're going to buy you. And so if you're not being who you really are, people can see straight through it. So, even if you think you're doing a great job at pretending, there's something there that people will go, she's nice, but it's just something doesn't feel quite authentic, with her. Authenticity is the one thing you can never, ever fake. Like you just can't. And so people feel when you're being your authentic self, and so many great things happen from that. So, even when I go into meetings with brands now, they very much so get Brandice, all of me.
That sounds like a good policy. Renee Cooper, who I think it works at FIT, if I'm not mistaken, has said, thank you for sharing your real story, Brandice. It's wonderful to see you at FIT. I'm glad you made it to Memphis. I made it to LA.
Oh, yay.
Renee Cooper, do you know her? Is this?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I do.
So Laura, and the next one, Laura Diaz Alberto, 2 questions for Brandice. One, do you think the fashion show aspect of the business will remain, or do you have anything new in mind for showing new collections? That's one question. Let's start with that one. Do you think that this is something I've actually heard talked about, that the fashion show itself might not be around?
for years, right, Alex, this has been a conversation about, how do we present collections? What makes the most sense? Are fashion shows relevant? And quite honestly, the answer from my perspective is no, even though we continue to do them. I've always felt like we needed to pivot, but pivoting is, sounds is easier said than done, right? So, but I think when you have something like this happen, it forces the industry to pivot. So it's kind of like fashion industry showing on calendar or showing in season. Something like this is going to basically force everyone to make the decision that's right for them. I think we'll see people doing it several different ways until there becomes kind of an industry standard way, or there may never become an industry standard way. It may be that everyone at this point really has to decide like what's the right thing for their business. I mean, we're thinking right now our biggest event happens in September, and that's our fashion show and style awards. And I don't know where New York is going to be. And we've got big plans. We've got a new collaboration that we're launching for our event. So there's lots of things for us to think about. But I do think that this time is going to breed some really great innovation. And we've already started thinking about like, what does even an in-person event look like? With a little bit of social distancing, right? Because even though, even if they take the band off, like I'm not going to be in an event with 500 people shoulder to shoulder. Like, I'm just not going to want that for myself. So I am even thinking through like, what does that look like? Does that look like less people for us? Does it look like a certain kind of venue? Just I'm thinking through all options and possibilities. So I think we'll see a lot of innovation come from this situation in fashion.
Yeah. What did you think, by the way, of I don't know if you saw this, but Rihanna's brand did their whole show online. It was just like a video. I mean, do you think that might be something people do instead of the in-person thing, just make like a really cool, innovative video for their brand? Well, that's subside.
Yeah, I mean, the way she launched it was brilliant. She actually was also an in-person event. So it was an in-person experience. It was a video. It launched on Amazon, if I'm not mistaken. Was it Amazon or Netflix?
Netflix, I think.
Okay. Okay. And it launched on one of the major streaming platforms. It was just super smart. Like, it was a way to not just introduce your collections to editors and fashion influencers, but basically through the world, through that streaming platform. So I think that is a very smart way to do it. I think I'm going to learn a lot from the virtual event that we're hosting on May 16th. I'll learn a lot from that. So I'll have more to share after that event.
Okay. Next question. What would you say is your top recommendation for the designers in your community at this time?
My top recommendation is pivot. I pivot and tell the truth. Those are my two things. So what do I mean by that? Right now, this isn't the time to like put out your fancy photos of the shoot that you took last year, at this, and just put it out there and say spring 2000. Da, 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 da. This is really the time to like connect with your audience and say, hey, this was a photo shoot that we took. We had planned on launching it right now. I had no idea we would be in the middle of this. If I had known, I would have appreciated that moment so much more, to really be human. This is the time to really connect with people in that way. And then, so it's like really telling the truth. And if you're having a hard time as a designer, or, your products aren't being manufactured because your factory is closed, it's a great time to just have a real truthful conversation with your customers. Customers are going to resonate with it right now. I think people are more human in this moment than they've been in a very long time. So I think this is a time where people just want to connect with you as a human. And in terms of pivoting, I think that every designer should be making masks. Like, New York is now requiring everyone to wear a mask out. LA has now made that a requirement. You're talking about two of the largest cities in the United States. So, and where are we going to get masks from? Right now, I'm sure Nike is working on it. I'm sure Gucci is working on it. I'm sure these brands are working on it, but right now they're not in the market. And quite honestly, they can't really go to market as fast with it because they don't want to look like an opportunist on a crisis. However, A smaller designer can. And this is the time for them to strike before the big brands hop into this.
Very good. All right, I'm going to ask one more question, then I think we're going to wrap it up. Um, Someone said, so what do you think is the problem when a designer gets the press and the celebrity nod? Why can't they make it?
So that's like the celebrity nod is so great, right? Press is so great. But neither one of those things bring in any income, right? So there's not like HFR I remember our 5th year, we had had so much press, had been featured in every major magazine, but that doesn't equate to a dollar. So, but you can kind of use that, right, to leverage opportunities. And most designers who are designing, small designers, they're producing in the US. So their price points are going to be higher, right? So you might say a dress that you could get for $400 at Saks Fifth Avenue, maybe a similar dress to that, the designer might be charging $800 for it because that's what they have to charge for it to make money. So there's definitely a barrier when it comes to price. But I think a lot of it is that, we teach all the areas of, how to get press. And we're constantly talking about connecting with stylists so you can get your products on certain celebrities. But when it comes to like digital marketing, email marketing, content marketing, how to run Facebook ads, Instagram ads, how to make sure that you're capturing your audience. How do you make sure that you're capturing their content, their emails, right? To be able to communicate back with them and to sell them on items. Those are things that most designers don't know. And without the commerce piece of it, which includes all of the marketing, which, and not just marketing just to be marketing and putting your brand out there, but actually marketing that converts to sales, it's almost impossible for a designer to make it. And unfortunately, that has been the case for, I don't know what, 100 years in fashion. So that's not something that just happened. I mean, there have been stories upon stories of designers that were so famous in this industry, but had no money at all. And so a lot of designers who even that we know today that are big names have gone bankrupt, but then have to start over again. So I think that's part of it. I think the other piece of it in not having like the business acumen and the knowledge to be able to actually sell your collection is having a cash influx and being able to get investors for your brand and all of that, right? Even getting investors for your brand, you have to show the investor how they're going to make their money back, which then requires the business acumen again. And that has been one of the most challenging things I've seen. And even with our In the Black program, that's why we focus very little on creativity. And a lot of our focus is on, email marketing. So how do you do your social in a way that converts sales? I'm very focused on sales because without that, designers will come in and out of the market. So I think that, it's just a matter of knowing that you need both the creativity and also understanding the marketing and business.
It is such a huge industry and it's so complicated, I feel like you've really hit on exactly what I've experienced. So many people, really talented FAT designers who graduate and they're showing me their dress. I'm like, that's amazing. But then, if they don't have that person who can sort of partner with them and kind of go, there's all this stuff you have to think about inventory and returns and all these things, they just get swamped. Anyway, let's not end on a bad note because that's not what's going to happen. Everybody on this call is going to be making masks and making millions of dollars, and we'll all have Brandice to thank. Thank you, Brandice. It was incredibly kind of you to spend the hour with us and chat. We're so grateful to you. Thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be an